fiscal responsibility is sort of like a ubiquitous thing in your life. It really permeates your entire professional life, obviously, in your thinking. The metaphor that's there is the idea of a pilot with a steady hand in the treacherous waters of a harbor. That there's work to be done to preserve the current situation for this enormous population. In terms of conceptualization, a lot of the work that you do, we think, is predictive, and it's based on data that is both current and historical, but it's also contingent. There's a rainy day sort of mentality that you have to have, knowing that the data, like the Clinton budget surplus, a lot of that was predictive budget surplus based on if the stock market keeps going up as it is, we're going to have this surplus. So did the Clinton budget surplus actually exist? Well, I don't know. Okay, ideology. Oh yeah, so with the ideology business, we thought that it's important that the Comptroller General be dispassionate about the data and the analysis that she or he does, but at the same time understand that the assessment that you make is going to be used by passionate people to engage with passionate issues. So while you need to be while he or she needs to be as objective and neutral as possible, what your product is not going to be used in a neutral or objective way. And that sort of bled right over into the reflective ideology. You need to have an awareness of your bias. The idea of if your office comes back with a projected cost of healthcare at $700 billion, that might pass Congress, but $1.1 trillion, that might not pass Congress. So if you have sort of a belief that a certain course of action should be taken by the government, you're actually in a position, in a way, to influence that decision. But should you influence, again, like you're the Comptroller General, not a decision maker, but a clearinghouse of information and a person who helps decision makers make informed decisions, informed policies.
I'm trying to find an article in the New York Times this week that illustrates this, but the current comptroller was being criticized by Democrats because his assumptions are very tight in the healthcare costs and when it will become budget neutral and or budget positive. And it's interesting because he says that, well, it's just the facts, but yet there are assumptions that undergird those facts, and he recognizes that. So we struggle with it, how do you take what you believe ought to be the outcome and segment that in a position that's supposed to be dispassionate about things that are very passionately held, and the struggle that must create for the role in that position. And I was equating it with working with students that you already know, and I always tend to be harder on those students that I already know than the students that I don't know, because you want to be sure you're correcting the bias that you have with the students that you know. You know what I mean? In classes that you have, like down the road. Anyway, not quite this sort of level of importance of the GAO, but
hey, it's more important.
In some ways, yeah, for some people.
So we were the CFO of Bear and Stearns, not to be confused with Bear Stearns. Because we were the CFO of a financial firm, we defined fiscal responsibility as decision making that reflects the financial well-being of the firm. And obviously that is our almost sole consideration. As a matter of fact, when I was listening to the rest of you all, community and social responsibility did not even enter into our conversation. So there was no talk of, of the greater good. What we did talk about was keeping the company afloat with no deficit, making sure that the balance sheet was always in the black, and maintaining this level of quality of life as defined by someone who would be in a well-compensated position of access, like the CFO of a financial firm. And that the conceptualization of these things led to these terms of balance sheet, revenue, expenditure, efficiency, productivity, all of these things that have bearing on how we answer to our shareholders. And that led to the ideology of, we are doing these things in the best interest of the shareholders. and that we would obviously favor decreased regulation, government regulation, and we strongly support the free market ideals as they, benefit the company itself. In our reflective inquiry, instead of focusing on those 20% of people who lost their jobs, let's look at how we can best invest in the 80% of the employees that, we retain. So we try to spin it like that. And another part of this reflective piece is probably one of the bigger conflicts is this utopian view of the free market enterprise where everyone is able to get something out of the free market system, but the reality of, that's not how it is. 20% of the people have to lose their jobs. We have to kind of focus and press forward, making sure that our shareholders are still going to be in a position of profitability at the end of the day. So the conflict is that interest of the shareholders, who are still people, and the interest of the employees, who are also still people. So which people are you valuing in this situation above the other one? And as a corporate officer, obviously at the end of the day, you have to do what's in the best interest of your corporation, being a person in that situation yourself. So that was